Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It's Lee Henson, president and founder of Agiledad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Standup. So without any further ado, let's get started. Today, I wanted to discuss with you 10 things that a boss or leader should never do if they hope to inspire people and earn respect. Now, I recently had the opportunity to read a blog post with similar information, but I don't know that I was in line with everything that was there. So I was trying to find a way to spruce it up a little bit. The post was made several years ago, so I wanted to get you to a place where I felt I could outline how behavior of a leader, especially a servant leader, impacts the rest of the organization. Because the truth is, being a leader in an organization isn't easy, right? Leaders are constantly approached from every angle to create new ideas, formalize solutions, solve problems, create opportunities. This means that oftentimes it's in your best interest to surround yourself with some of the best people who are smarter than you are, to assist you with these responsibilities and to get things rolling. But in order to do the right things, one of the things that I quickly discovered is that it's a lot easier for me to keep track of a few things that I should never do. So I thought I'd start with a top 10 list of things that a leader, a strong leader, whether it's a scrum master, whether it's a director, a VP, it doesn't matter. If you lead teams even, these are 10 things you should never do. Coming at number one, right at the top of my list, do not govern with a death by rules mentality. If every time something goes wrong, somebody came in 2 minutes late from lunch, we need to create a new rule, a new policy, and we'll call it the late from lunch policy. And I've seen organizations do this where they make it so cumbersome to be part of the organization, and they make it so rule heavy that people are just like, I'm not going to remember all these things. And oftentimes you're creating this environment where people feel unsafe, where people feel like they're just being micromanaged. I mean, it's really rough, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, instead of focusing on creating all these rules, because of one incident, it's often better just to take the individual involved and counsel that person or group in private, and identify what we can do to make sure it doesn't happen again, instead of creating a rule that applies to everyone. It's just plain simple management to know that sometimes the shotgun approach and hitting everybody isn't always right. Sometimes being targeted, both in critique and in praise, is a better approach, right? We want to make sure that we target the individual as a group and that we're honest and open about what we have as an issue and talk about it openly and figure out solutions to help solve the problem. Coming at number two, don't anger easily. Now, there's a quote, I believe it was Mark Twain, I'm trying to remember, but the quote goes, getting angry is easy. Anyone can do that. But getting angry in the right way, in the right amount, at the right time, now that's hard. So I think sometimes we need to look at ourselves, and sure, when people display that anger, when people display angst, it shows the strong emotion sometimes shows that they're a strong leader and it's justified. And I've seen that. I've seen that in presidents. I've seen that in presidents of countries. I've seen that in presidents of companies. It doesn't necessarily mean that you should never get to a point where you have strong feelings about something. I want to be clear. But there's a way to control the anger so that it doesn't become emotionally volatile, right? When you get to the point where your anger is controlling or manipulating or managing who you are, that's when you're going to find that that things go awry and the train goes off the track. We need to make sure we're keeping our negative emotion in check so that we can earn the respect of others. So oftentimes I say, we talked about Nelson Mandela last week in one of our episodes, and he was one of those people who rarely got angry and he was always last to speak. And I think this kind of ties into that. Sometimes just listening and hearing things out, sometimes instead of just flying off the handle and getting angry at what you hear, sometimes it's better to take a back seat and figure out where you are instead of just getting angry right away. Number three is probably one of my favorites. Don't bother your people when it's their time off. I'm guilty as charged, but I didn't know. So let me explain. So I had an opportunity where I was working with a large company and we were doing some coaching for them. And I sent out a coach to kick things off. And I heard back from the coach. The coach told me everything was fancy and wonderful and great. But I did want to touch base with the leader because it was our first engagement with this company. So I called this leader, it was on a Friday, and said, hey, I just want to touch base and see how things were going. And the number I dialed said direct line. So I thought I was reaching his direct office line, when in actuality, I was calling his cell phone. And he said, oh, things went great. And he was trying to be brief, but I didn't catch the hint. And he says, hey, Lee, listen, I'm with my wife and kids and we're out and today's my vacation day. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I felt like an utter failure. I was like, I am so sorry. I wish you would have told me that first, right out of the gate. I certainly would have never bothered you on your time off. And I think that when people take that time to be with their family or to do something they truly care about, it's important to let them focus on that and unwind. And I think that if we're a good leader, a strong leader, we're not going to bother them when they have that personal time. The next one's Captain Obvious. Number 4, don't misrepresent the truth. The truth is, and this is so sad, many bosses lie. I can tell you, I've worked for these people. I've worked with these people. A lot of times they feel like we can just withhold information and people only need to know it on a need to know basis and never lie. But the truth is, when you're not transparent, people know it. A good boss always strives for transparency, right? Lying includes things like acting more than you do to your employees when you really don't, or trying to be technically smarter than you really are in every single thing your employees do when they're the expert and you're not. You need to show them some respect, and you need to make sure that you're open and honest in your communications with others. Number 5 is don't criticize publicly, or for that matter, praise privately. This is one that's been around for a long time too. If you have something critical to say it to the single individual party or the people that are involved, but make sure you're doing that privately. When it comes time for praise and appreciation, make sure you're giving credit to the people who deserve the credit publicly, so everyone knows who is responsible for that good idea. This is just management 101. Number 6, I like this one. Don't put yourself first. There have been several opportunities where I could have put myself first, but a good leader always has the attitude of putting other people first. It's one of those things where I always say, this was a great concept and it was a great rollout, but it's not all me. We couldn't have done it without the help of X, Y, Z, or ABC. And I think it's just so important for people to be rooted in their success and for you to always build people up. It's impossible to not get a little bit of that energy, that positive flow yourself when you're uplifting other people. I frequently say when you lose yourself in the service of others is when you discover who you really are. Number 7, don't be inconsistent. And this is interesting. I'm talking about with expectations, right? So if you talk to your team and you're totally okay with an idea one day, then the next day you're like, oh, this is a major problem. The team's going to be receiving mixed signals and they're not going to know because they'll feel like they're in a lose-lose situation. If they do it, it's great, but it's not really going to be great because you're going to come back and bite them later. It's one of those things where you have to be consistent with your expectations, with the way you behave. You can't be the dual personality. You can't be the split personality, right? You need to, and you can't show favoritism. You need to always be open to the ideas, and you need to be consistent in the way that you treat things and in the way that you behave. Number 8's another one of the Captain Obvious ones for me. Don't spy. Good leadership is based on a mutual leader-worker trust, right? And it's just one of those things where you have to have trust built in a relationship. You have to be creating an environment of psychological safety. You don't want to spy on other people at any level, not even your peers. I think it's just so important to not keep tabs on people and know exactly what's going on and have a network of people you can talk to. The better way to manage is just to manage with trust. And I always lead with trust, right? I trust you implicitly until you give me a reason not to trust you. And I think that that's a more effective form of leadership. Number 9's don't make people do things just so you look good. That's interesting because I think the worst kind of task is the one that your boss tells you that you need to do. And the only reason that they're asking you to do it is so that they look better. Oh my gosh. That's something that drives people crazy, right? I've been there, done that. In fact, I got a closet full of t-shirts. If someone asks you, for example, to stay until 6 p.m. on New Year's Eve when you should be, ringing in the new year with your family or whatever the case may be, and to totally thwart your plans. And the only reason they're asking you to stay is to get that last end of the year report generated so that they look favorable, so they don't miss a deadline. It just makes everybody feel sketchy. It makes everybody feel awful, right? Especially when you don't publicly recognize them for doing it. I mean, I'll admit it. I've been there before where I needed something right away and I've asked people to help, but not without that recognition, right? And finally, the last one, the most important one of all, do not micromanage. Oh my goodness. I've been with these people, but I can tell you right now, micromanagement is literally the assassin of any initiative you try to launch. If you want to see something plummet fast, micromanage it. It's so amazing when I see leadership who constantly has their thumb on the pulse of everything, thinking that this is a positive thing, only to discover that they're really doing things that are creating havoc in the organization. I just think it's so important for us to regain our focus and to know the direction we're trying to take things. So I hope you got those. Don't govern with the death by rules mentality. Don't anger easily. Don't bother your people during their time off. Don't misrepresent the truth. Don't criticize publicly or praise privately. Don't put yourself first in everything. Don't be inconsistent with your expectations. Don't spy on others. Don't make people do things just so you look good. And whatever you do, don't micromanage. That'll do it. Easy for a Tuesday. We went a little long, but I hope it was educational for you as always. We encourage you to visit agiledad.com where you can learn more about this topic and many others. And until next time, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Do take care.